Hey friends and everyone, welcome back to Netcode-Hub channel. I am Frederick, as you know, and I'm happy to have you here today. In this video, we are going to talk about how to implement JWT authentication in clean architecture. I have made a separate video explaining what clean architecture is, so if you actually don't know what clean architecture is, maybe I suggest you watch that video. Also, in this video, I'm going to give you an overview, just a brief of this clean architecture and how to implement this JSON Web Token in clean architecture. Alright, before we dive right into this, if you know you have not subscribed to this channel, then click on that notification bell once you subscribe to receive an update as soon as I do upload new content. Also, like this video, click on that like button to like this video, okay, to help this channel and also support the growth of this channel. I do offer training session to people who are interested in .NET technologies, talking about Blazor, WebAssembly Server, Web API, Mari, Blazor Hybrid, and a lot. So if you're interested, I have an email in the video description. Check it out and write to me through it. Clean architecture, it is a software design philosophy introduced by Robert C. Martin, and we normally call him as Uncle Bob. It is just a set of principles and patterns that aim to create maintainable, scalable, and testable software by structuring code in a way that separates consents and dependencies. So we don't do everything together. We put them into basics, we put them into units, and we connect the unit together. That's all about this clean architecture. Put all your code into units and now join this unit together, like chain. That's what we call the separation of consents and also the dependencies. So each is going to depend on the other one. And at the end of the day, we're going to have the base one. They're going to build this up with the dependencies. Okay. Clean architecture consists of several layers. By this, we're going to talk about one of the implementation, that is having the entities or the domain, having application layer, having presentation layer, and also the infrastructure layer. 4 layers, and that is what you're going to have a look in this video. Okay. So we're going to create this. Now, we're not going to consume this API or this authentication, JWT authentication in Blazor application. We're not going to do that. I'm going to show you how to implement this JWT authentication in clean architecture. Maybe I know about that one, you know how to do it, isn't it? Yeah, I believe you. You can do that. But if you think you cannot do it, then also let me know. You can put it at the comment section there. And I'm going to have a separate video to consume this architecture that we're going to create, this authentication in the Blazor WebAssembly application. Isn't that nice? Alright, so I'm going to create a new project in here. So click on, make sure you have a Visual Studio 2022 or higher launched, and click on create new project. So this, since we're going to work on the authentication in clean architecture, I would like us to create a solution, blank solution. Let's give it a name. Yes, so demo JWT authentication with clean architecture. You know, if you want to grab the source code, I'll make it available as well, so you can check this video description. Now that is the solution. So actually, I want to add solution to this. Yes, very long, but it makes meaning, isn't it? Okay, so we have it here. When you go to Solution Explorer, you're going to have just your solution name here. Right click on this solution. You're going to add 3 classes, and I'm going to name them separately. So the first one I'm going to choose for C# library, and this is going to be the C# class. Take note, and here we're going to say this is domain. Okay, so we have your domain in here. We're going to create this in .NET 8. Take note, and also we're going to create another class, and this is going to be application. We're going to have infrastructure, and you're going to have presentation. Okay, so let's see. We're going to, once we have this domain, we're going to add the next project. It is the same class library. So choose that. There's going to be an application. Okay, so this is ready. We're going to create another one. Not this. I click on this solution, click on add new project. And this is going to be infrastructure. So the same class library. So infrastructure. So let's get this created. So we have 3 classes now: application, domain, infrastructure. and we need one more. But this time around, it is not a class. We need a presentation. So this is going to be a new project in here. And we're going to choose Web API. So with this, we know this presentation, but I'm not going to say presentation. I'm going to make it as Web API. Okay, so Web API. And for authentication type, we choose none because we're going to create our own. Then let's click on create. Yeah, so when we check this one, the presentation of the clean architecture, we have these 4 layers. Now these 4 layers, they are dependent to each other. So when we check this, we have the presentation layer, that is a Web API. We have the infrastructure, we have the domain, and we have the application. What does each mean, or does it do? The presentation layer, as you know, that is a UI. Okay, so this is going to consume the application layer. So let's add this dependencies, add project reference, add this application layer. Okay, now that is it. So the UI or the presentation consumes only the application layer. Okay, aside from that, the infrastructure here is going to consume this application layer because we're going to create an interface in here and we're going to create our repository in the infrastructure. So I click on this, I click on dependencies, add project reference, add the application. And now when it comes to application, it's also going to consume the domain. The domain are the entities. So we right click on this application and add domain. You see, so the domain is independent. It doesn't depend on anyone for survivor. Yes. Okay, now let's start. So once we have this relationship and dependencies issue solved, now this is what we can do. We're going to, let me just clear this, the default class created for each of the model. Then let's check for the application. We also have this. Okay, so now that we have this set, we're going to build the application and install packages, which are the EF-Core tools, EF-Core SQL Server. Okay, these are the 3 packages that we need for now, and we want to do that. Maybe we can also download or use bcrypt to encrypt the password. We're not going to use Identity Manager now. We're going to use our own way to encrypt the password. So we're going to install these 4 packages. Let's get going. So let's build this project first. Let's make sure we install the default NuGet packages needed to run this app. After that, we're going to install these packages. That's right. It is built, succeeded, yeah, and 4 projects succeeded, and that's fine because we have 4 projects in here. Now we're going to install these packages in here. Now what we're going to do here is we go to the infrastructure. That is the data access layer. So that's where we're going to have all our connection to database. Okay. Right click on dependencies and click on add package references. But not this one. NuGet packages, this guy. So we're going to install EF-Core. So click on the browse tab and now we need EF-Core. So 8.0.2 as I speak, that's the current one. We need tools. Then we need SQL Server. So this is the next one, that is this one. We're going to encrypt the password. So let's install bcrypt. bcrypt.net. This one. Okay, now when we are done, we're going to create a dependency injection, that's a service container. and we need to register in the web API. Now when we register, we're going to also register the service in there and perform migration against the web API, but we're going to select the infrastructure as a default and to run that. So in that, we need to install another package in here to dependencies of the API, and now we need only the EF core.tools. That's all that we need to install. So tools. That's fine. We can close all this because we are done with them. And now let's go and run this, build this again. Yeah, so succeeded. Now we're going to work on the infrastructure because that's where we're going to have our data access. So everything that get connected to database and migration, every stuff is going to be in the infrastructure project. So we're going to create a folder in here, and I'll name this as data access. Maybe data will be okay. We need our models, and this model must come in the domain. So we're going to create this, and I'm going to name this as entities. Now this database entities, we're going to add a class of this, and maybe this is going to be a user. So application user, and now in that, what are some of the properties that we need? So before a user registers our system, we want to have an ID, and this ID is an integer automatically as a primary key. In that, we also need, let's see. Okay, so let me just remove this. We also need name. So we need name. Then we need maybe email address. Email. And the last one, we need password. Okay, so we need these properties in here from every user who wants to register an account with us. ID, going to supply automatically, so we need the name, email, and password. Okay, now when it comes to the data, we're going to create our class, and it's going to be the DB contest. So DB contest. Okay, now the DB contest, since we've installed efcore.sql server, like just the EF core, we can inherit from this DB contest class, and this is coming from EF core. So we install this. We need to create constructor for this one, and now pass in this DB contest. Now we need to create a DB set, which is going to be the database table. So application user, and now this is coming from the domain. So with this application user, we're going to have maybe users or something like that. Okay, so that's going to be the table name. And I'm going to use the properties in here to create columns. That's fine. Let's save this. Now let's go to, so once you have this created, we need to set our connection strings in here in the appsetting.json from the API. So in that you can have connection strings, and let's say this is default. I'm going to have server equal to local, referring to my computer, database is equal to JWT with clean architecture. Okay, so I have DB, very long, but it makes sense. Then I have trusted underscore connection. Set this to true. The last one is trust server certificate. Certificates, set this to true as well. Yes, that's fine. Done. Now we go back to in here, Solution Explorer. Now, instead of creating or writing the service in here, no, we're going to create dependency injection. So, right on the infrastructure, we're going to add a new folder to this. Now, let's call this dependency. Injection. The reason why we are doing this is we want this presentation layer is just consuming the application layer. That's the only thing that's going to do. Okay, and we're going to raise a service from this. Aside from raising the service from the infrastructure and also consuming the application, it's not going to do anything. So anytime that you want to change that presentation layer, you can change it without having to go through a lot of stress, because what you're doing here is you need only your controllers in here, and that is all. You're going to create everything in between the infrastructure and that application. So this is going to be a consumer. Consumes it, and off you go. So in here we're going to create a class, and maybe we can name this as service container. For this service container, we're going to create a class in here and now register this. And now this class is going to be a static class. So you're going to have a static container, and it's going to be public. In that, we need to create a class in here as a static, and whereby this we need to pass in the iService collection. So I call this as infrastructure services, and I'm making this as an explicit. So I'm passing in this iService collection, creating that service, and I'll pass in that configuration so I can retrieve the connection strings. Okay. Now in here, I need my AppDB context connection, and that is what I'm doing in here. You can see the AppDB class that we created from the same layer, and now we're not going to use SQLite. We're going to use SQL Server. And now the name here, do you remember? It's default. Okay. Then we're going to specify the lifetime here as scope and type application to create an instance for the whole application. Okay, now once you're done, we need to register service in here. But before we do that, let's return services. Okay, now we're going to remove all this. Let's go to, so this is what we need to consume in the application layer. Now let's go to, not in the presentation layer, sorry, I don't want to confuse you today. Let's go to the API, and now from the program, we need to add this. But before we do that, then we need to consume this infrastructure in here once for the service. Okay, so this is what we can do. Dependency is going to add project reference, and we're going to add the infrastructure in here. And now with the infrastructure, the session that we're going to inject here, we're going to use here, it is only for this service that we created. So here we're going to say builder.services.infrastructure. But before we do this, we need to include the project itself. So we say using an infrastructure dot dependency injection. And now in here we can have access to infrastructure service dot infrastructure service. And now this needs configuration, so we're going to say builder.configuration. Yes, that is all. So now once you have this, we have our connection registered. Maybe you can cross check and see if it is the same from here. Yes, same. We save that. And this, alright, so we're going to perform database migration. Before this, let's build this. Succeeded. Now we're going to perform migration. So let's go to, an API is supposed to be the startup project. Click on the output, not the output, the package manager console. Now we're going to choose the infrastructure, and I say add migration. This is first. So build succeeded. Now let's wait for the file to get created. So the file is created. Update database. This is done. Very simple one. So we have a database with one table known as users. Only one, because we created one. Okay. And now this table has the following columns: ID, name, email, and password. Okay. Let's go to solution. And in that, we need to create a repo for this. But before we do that, we go to application. And then in here, we're going to create a DTOs. So let's create a folder. Name it as DTOs. With this DTO, we're going to add user, so a class. Now let me say this is maybe register user DTO. In terms of registration, what do I need? We go to the same application user model, and then in here, I'm going to copy everything, and I'm going to paste it in here. Just I'm going to exclude the name, the ID, because I don't need. ID is going to be provided automatically, so there's no need to add the ID. Let's make this as public. Okay. We can also set this as a record. So we can just send here as record. And now instead of having all this, we're going to say string name. We're going to cut this. And now you're going to put it here. String name. Let's cut the email. Oh, okay. It has even suggested for us automatically. So let's see. Are you coming again? Oh, this is not coming. Are you coming again? Okay, so this is not coming. Now let's see. Let's do it ourselves. Okay. And the next one, we have the password. We can close this and we can get rid of all this. Okay. But we're going to implement something in here. We're going to implement our models, required attributes, and some attributes in here. So maybe to add those attributes, we have to get it as a class. Okay, so that's the reason why we need to use this. And now this no more, you don't want to make it as a record. You want to have this as a class. Now in here, we want to specify an attribute on top. This is required. Maybe you can just grab this, and this is equal to string.empty. Same. And we're going to do same here. And on top of this, we have the required attributes. Here too, we have the same required attribute. And here we're going to have email address. Okay. And a password. We need one more. And that's going to confirm password. And now this, we're going to say confirm password. And now here we can compare. So we're going to have compare. And we're going to have name of. So name of password. We're comparing to this. Okay. And that is all. So this is what we need to create for this application or this registration model. Okay. We save this, and now we're going to the login. So we can just grab password and our email address and grab it from here. We create our login DTO. So add a class of this login DTO. Now we're going to add them here. So this is going to be public. Let's remove the necessary ones. Okay. So this is what we have. Now let's go in there and create our repo. So we go to our solution, and in here from the application, we need to also create a let's create this and name it as contract. That's a folder. So in the contract folder, we're going to create only one contract, and that's one interface. Don't let me confuse with the contracts and interface. Oh, see what I did. It's supposed to be, let's say this our user, and this is public. Okay, so we have to change the name of the interface, and we're going for login and registration. So this is task. Okay, so this task, maybe we can have, is it some model as a response to handle this, or we need to, okay, let's create a class, a DTO to as a response. So maybe we can have, this is DTOs. Let's add one here. Okay, we want to make this simple, and this is going to be response. Okay, so this is registration. Response. And now this registration response is going to be a public, and it's going to be record. And in here, we're going to have just maybe a message or a boolean. Let's have as a flag. And I believe you know this, and we have a message in here. Okay, let's set this to null, so default. Okay, now let's go back and let's clear all this because we don't need them. Let's go to the interface and task. We're going to say this is registration response, and you're going to have registration response. Okay, yeah. So this is register user. I want to make it at async. And now with this, we need a register DTO. Okay. As we've done for this, you know, with our login, we need to have a token. So maybe we want to have another class for this. And we're going to say that is login response. You know, there's going to be a record, and we need to clear this. And now in here, you're going to have the same flag. You're going to have string message. This is equal to null. And we're going to have string token, and it's equal to null as default. Let's remove all this. Now let's go back to the interface, and this is going to be task login response, and we're going to say login user async, whereby you pass in login DTO. We need these two interfaces, isn't it? Let's go to the repo, and there's going to be the infrastructure, and that's we're going to have our implementation. So we're going to add a folder here, And let's say this is, let's make it as repo, not implementation. Now with this repository, we're going to have a class. This is user repo. And this is going to inherit from which one? iUser. Let's implement the interfaces in here. Can remove all this because we don't need them. So now we have this login and I register. What are you going to do? Login. So let's see, let's get user. And we need to create constructor for this. CTOR. Let's inject our appdb context. And we're going to say that appdb context dot users dot find async. By this async, we need to find by ID. By here, let's use dot first or default. Of default async, so we specify our own what we need. So u dot, and now here we're going to check if the email is equal to login DTO dot email. So you want to find this. We check if this get user equal to null, then it means are not found. We can return new instance of login response. And then here we can specify false as a flag, and now the message here is going to be user not found. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Then in case user is found, then what are you going to do? We're going to check the password. So check password. That's equal to, you're gonna have, let's say bcrypt.net dot bcrypt dot verify password. Then we need the old password. So on check here, you can see that we need a string test and a hash. So what is the test here? Login DTO dot password, and now is the hash? Get user dot password. So we say if check password is true, okay, then we need to generate a token. So let's see, generate token, and it's gonna be JWT token. And now with this token, we're gonna pass in get user. We pass in this model. Then at the end, we're going to return new login, and this is true. Maybe you can say login successful, or then we're going to have, so login successfully, and also we're going to have the token, and we can create, we can say token is equal to, okay, or we can call this method. This is going to return a string, and we can call this method in here. So we can get rid of this, get rid of this, get rid of this. One line. We close this. Else, what do? You return the same thing. So in case this is false, then we can say return new login user, login response false. Okay, and here we say invalid credentials, so we can just write something like that. That is all. Okay, Now we need to create a method to generate the token, but for now, let's come to registration. So you first want to check. So you see that here, we first want to check. So this is what we can do. We can just cut this. We want to apply dry principle. So let's cut this one. And now this is going to be, this is going to return application user. Then we say find user by email and passing string email. Now this is marking to this. So now this method, send this a task, it must be an async. So we can now call this method here. So instead of this, we can just assign this one. Now this method that we have is equal to await, call this, and pass in login DTO dot email. Let's check if this is not null. Okay. Now here we're going to also do same. So we can just copy this line of code and now put it here. We get a user. This must be an async. And now instead of this, you wouldn't say login, rather register DTO. So we say if user is found, if get user is not equal to null, its user is registered already, then what can we do? We want to return this, but this is not login. This is registration. Okay. So we wouldn't say invite credential because we gotta check it. So user already exists. Else, what are we doing? You want to encrypt the password. So we can say that user, or we can say appdb contest dot users dot add. Okay, then new application user. Then we can extend this. After that, we say await appdb contest dot save changes async. Then we return new registration model or response, whereby this we pass this as true, and we can say registration completed. Okay. So yeah, what are we doing? We need to specify ID is going to be automatically generated. So we need name. Now name is equal to the registration DTO.name. We can have email, and it's equal to registration email. We're going to have password. This password is equal to, we're going to have registration.password. Okay, but before we do this password, they're going to encrypt this. So you're going to say that bcrypt.net.bcrypt.hashpassword, then pass in the password. You see that? Yes. And after that, we save it because these are the properties that we created: name, email, and password. That's what we need. Then we save it and I return. That's what that we are doing. Very simple. So now all we're going to do here is we're going to work on the generate token. If the password is correct or it matches with what we have already, then we're going to generate the token. So before we generate the token, we have to register JWT service, and we have to create our audience, our issuer, and the key. Okay, so let's get this job done. So there's one package that we need to install to the infrastructure. So I'll click on infrastructure, go to dependencies, and let's manage the packages. Let's manage the packages. So okay, so in here we're going to write JWT bearer. This is a package that we need to install. It is coming from the Microsoft.ASP Netcode-Authentication, this one. So install. So this is done. Now let's go to the service container that we created. And now in here, we're going to register authentication service. So within the service in here, we're going to have service.authentication. Then in here, we're going to also specify the JWT bearer, whereby in this, we are going to specify all the necessary service that we need. So add JWT bearer, and as you can see from here, we need issuer, audience, lifetime, and now we want to grab the configuration from this. Okay, because here, you know, we injected the configuration with an instance, and that is where we are using it from. And once you have this, we need to specify the key, and now the issuer and the audience in the app.json. Okay, so let's actually do that. But before we do this, let's register the repo that we created. So maybe down here, we can say services.add_scope and iUser. And this is user repo. Okay, so this is working. Let's go to the solution. We go to the API, and I can see from the program on top of this, let's add app.use. We have authentication on top, then we have authorization. Okay. So in order to specify all this, we go to the API, app.json. Now here, we need to specify the key, the issuer, and the audience. For now, we want to maintain the IP for the same project as an audience and the issuer. So from the application, properties, line settings, we can grab the HTTPS, that is 7044 for HTTPS. We go to the app settings, and let's replace them. This key should be a random keys, and now here it should be not less than 16 characters. So this is around 40, so you can just create your own key. This is what you're going to use to create the token. Okay, so this key is very important, and you must keep it secret. Okay, so we have this set. We've added the service, and now this is working. So the next thing to go in there and now create our repo. Not the repo, generate token. And we can find that in the user repo, where it's mine. So we can create it at this method. So this is a method, and I'm going to return string. So in this method, we can just quickly create our own, and that's what we are doing. So when you check this, we create a security key. We get it from the configuration, and now with this configuration, to get this, we need to also inject our configuration here. We get configuration, we get the key that we stated, and in here we get our credentials. So these are credentials from the key that we created or we retrieve in here. We set as a credential. Okay, using this algorithm, HMAC-SHA-256. And also we specify our claims. So within the claims, let me make this as user. So we have the name identifier, and that is the user ID. From the application layer, the application model, do we have user dot ID? Okay, .toString, since it is integer, we need to convert to a string. We have the name, and I have the email. So these are claims that we want to use to generate the token. Aside from that, we get the issuer, the audience. We specify our claims in here. We add an expiry date of the token as 5 days. Then there's a signing credential as we got here. At the end, we want to return the token in this format as a string. So this return a string. As you know, the method here is return a string, and now everything is solved. Okay, what left here is to create our controller. So let's go to the endpoint, the UI, inside the controller, we're going to create this. A controller in this. And there's going to be an API, empty one. And you want to say user controller. You want to create constructor for this. Then we're going to inject our repo. So we're going to consume the application layer. So our user, say user, control period, create an assign field. Then the first method here, we're going to log in. So let's say this is HTTP post. I'll specify a new route as login. This is public async task. Let's be specific on action result type. So action result. And now we are returning login result. So log user in. And now we need login DTO. And in here, we need to results is equal to await user dot login async. We pass in the DTO. After that, you want to return result. By this result, it is not the state that you want to make it is okay. Okay, then let's copy the same thing in here. Next line, we're going to say what? That's fine. Register. So register user. And now you know what? There's going to be what? Register DTO. Register DTO. So copy this, chip it in here, and I'll change this to register. And that is all. Let's build this application. Yeah, so this is done. Now we're going to run this app and test it out. Yeah, this is ready. So now let's see. Click on login. So if I click on execute this, let's see what happens. So I have user not found. Sorry. Now let's register user. So the same thing. Confirm password. We're going to register this user in here. So registration completed. Now let's log user in. Now you must see the token. Yes. So this is a token. We can just grab this token. Let's go to JWT.io. And now in here, let's paste the token. You know, we have our string. There's our username, email. There's an ID. And there's a issuer. And that's an audience. This is the expiry date. So if I click on it, we added 5 days. So you can see we have March 14th. You see, so we have these 5 days being added. And that's fine. Today is 9th, so we have March 14th. 9 plus 5 is not 14th? Yes. We have it in here. Okay. Today is working, isn't it? So when you go in there and check our system, you can see that what we did here to the UI is we did not actually work massively on the UI. What we did here is just consume what we have created. So anytime that you want to change the UI, it's very simple. You can just change the controller, add a controller, and also add all the service or register all the service in here. And that's all that you need to do. Very simple. Yes, I believe by now you can consume this in your API, not in your Blazor assembly, isn't it? Good. If you think you cannot do it, okay, put that in the comment section and I have a separate video to show you how to do that as well. Now let's go to this. Let's go to this a controller in here. Where is weather forecast controller? We want to make this as required. Okay, so here this authorize. So now we have this. Let's refresh this app and then check it out. So let's test this weather forecast. So try this out. Execute. Now you see we have 401. It means we are an unauthorized user. We are not authorized to access this content. Okay. In order to get this, we need to have a section or a feature that we can pass. We can log in, get a token, and now authenticate ourselves and I get access to this. So let's do that. We go to the program.cs, or even where we have the UI. So solution, you go to program.cs file from the API. Since we have the control and we have the Swagger registered in here, we can then specify maybe this Swagger. Let's remove this one. And now let's add this. So we specify an option to this. And now this option, you want to add the version, this view one. Maybe you can give it any version of your choice. There's a title and description. This is for Swagger doc. Aside from that, we add in the security definition. The type here, the scheme is for the bearer. And where do you want to specify it? That is the format is JWT. The scheme is a bearer. And as an API key, the name is authorization from the header. Also, when you come here, we want to put it inside the header. And now this is going to be the header session name. And there's a format or the scheme. Okay. And the type of the format here is what? The JWT. And in that, we have it in here. Okay, so that's all that we're doing. Now let's save this. Rerun this again. That's fine. So you can see that we have this feature set up here. So this small feature is what we added. A lot of code, small feature. Okay, so let's try to log in again. But before that, let's test this and see and confirm that yes, we are not authorized. Now let's log in. So we've registered already. We're going to log in now. So we are in. Let's grab our token. Then let's go to the authorize. And now the value here is we're going to pass in this value. Okay. So you type in our bearer space, then paste on this one. Click on authorize. Then you can close this. Now check it out. Click on execute. And now you have it. So that is it. You're authenticated. You are logged in. You can now access protected content. Yes, so that's a way to implement authentication, JWT authentication in clean architecture in .NET 8. Yes, so that is it. If you want me to have a video on how to consume this, let me know. I believe you can do that. So try it yourself and now let's see. Alright, so that is it. I'm going to make this video. The source could be available. Check the description and you can also have it. Thank you so much for watching and I'm going to catch up again. Till then, take care.